live in a very different time. Cargo theft is incredibly high. It's become more and more sophisticated, if you will, using technology and AI. It's not your cousin from Nigeria anymore and a fake email that's clearly a scam. I mean, this stuff's being written by AI now, and it looks like a legitimate, paperwork and stuff. So it's
Oh, it's
getting tougher
brutal.
to face.
It's brutal, Jamie. It's like you sit there and it's like, I mean, it's like, the people who actually know how to really look at this stuff can tell, but a lot of people who are working quickly. Jamie brings up a really good point too, and I'm actually might get you some comments about this. I would argue that cities are safe, that the real issue these days is the ex-urban areas. That there's a lot. I mean, like I said, I mean, of course, the administration wants to paint like these urban hellholes, but I would actually argue that the cities themselves, where the safety is, the fear right now is that the exurbs and the suburbs, and you could make an argument saying that with the flight inward, it really has kind of caused some issues. But you can make the argument saying that the real fear and the reason why they're doing a lot of this stuff is the biggest problem that's happening is that there's a lot of fraud out there. There's a lot of trucking fraud, and that's not happening on the docks of like New York City. It's happening in the sticks, and it's a dangerous place to be out there. You can make that argument, and there's an issue, and they're dealing with it. I mean, that you can say that part of it. I mean, part of those bad hombres the president talked about so many years ago. That's a country problem. That's an ex-bourbon problem. I
Well,
also wanted to kind of agree with you on something, John, that most Americans, I think, fall into the category of strong wall, big door when it comes to immigration. I think that's where most Americans fall. That they
I can't imagine being in your role right now with everybody coming to you to ask what's happening, what's going to happen, fire up the crystal ball. You might as well mail everybody a magic 8 ball.
It's pretty tough to keep on top of things. I mean, it's usually pretty tough to keep on top of things when we don't have all this. That's a lot in itself. But this, which literally changes from hour to hour, is pretty hard to keep on top of. I was in a meeting the other day, and I was going to be doing some Q&A, and somebody nudged me and said, "Hey, take a look at this." Got his phone, was looking at the stock market, and suddenly the stock market has soared thousands of points. And he said, something must have happened. And this was when Trump paused the tariffs for the next 90 days. This was in the middle of the meeting, this changed. So, and then stuff changes overnight.
I think everyone that understands our industry or has been close to it at any level will understand, the different issues that come up, the ELDs, the speed limiters. This industry's changed a lot in 11 years, and I would say that a lot of the time, the impact isn't really realized until after the fact.
Well, way after the fact, the ELD law, which is one that, we vehemently opposed pretty much throughout the life of the organization when, the feasibility of something like that first came along. But that legislation passed through Congress in 2012.
Right.
Now, it passed through Congress simply because it never would have been issued as a federal regulation simply because it would never survive a cost benefit. But if Congress requires it, as they ultimately did, then that issue goes away. And the method to the madness with ELDs is bigger carriers. They like regulation. They like regulation that applies to their competition.
We monitor traffic congestion at over 325 locations all over the U.S., at least one in each state. And we take a full calendar year worth of data, and we look at how slowly trucks are operating and how many trucks are impacted. So speed and volume go into this calculation to come up with the 100 worst places to operate a truck.
So who was number one this year?
Number one is the perennial favorite. It's been number one for 6 years in a row. It's at Fort Lee, New Jersey.
By the bridge, right?
By the bridge. So people who aren't familiar with where Fort Lee, New Jersey is, it's the New Jersey side of the George Washington Bridge that connects New York and New Jersey, and it's just a hot mess. It's 6 different roads that come together to a toll bridge. It's going to always have congestion because, remember, volume is one of those metrics. So there's always going to be trucks going into Manhattan to deliver and serve that population.
You can be in a car, and that may be one of the worst for a car anywhere in the country.
It is. I always have to remind the media because they say they interview me about this one because they say, well, that's traffic caused by trucks, and I'm like, oh no. It's just that our data comes from trucks, but if the trucks are going that slowly, the cars are going that slowly as well.
So, where was number 2?
Number 2 is in Chicago. Chicago has number 2 and number 3.
See, Joe, always a bridesmaid, Joe.
Always number 2. Windy City coming in second.
Yeah, but you know what? There's a good news story coming out of Chicago. So when we first started doing this, Joe, the Jane Byrne interchange used to be the Circle interchange, was the number 1 bottleneck for 3 years in a row. At that time, Pat Quinn was governor of Illinois, and Governor Quinn issued a press release and said, we do not want to have the worst truck bottleneck in the country anymore, so we're going to fix that. Now, that was a long time ago. You know that construction's been underway for a long time. But it is for the first time this year out of the top 10.
Okay.
The Byrne interchange came in at number 13 this year. So we're going to put that in the win column.
We went back and we looked at the data. And there have been, on average, per year, for the last 5 years, between 7,000 and 8,000 violations of this. That wasn't out of service, right? It was a violation. So you have to assume, to your point earlier, that not everybody was enforcing it to the same level. We'll have to see how that goes going forward, right? I mean, we don't know that that'll be enforced to that same level. But this is definitely not adding to capacity, right? I know and in fact, it's going to reduce it. Now, one related issue to this that I'm hopeful will help is, and that's around the illegal use of Mexican B1 drivers to haul domestic freight. We know it is happening, right? I mean, the government has told me it's happening, right? CBP, Customs and Border Protection, has told me, oh yeah, we know these drivers are doing this because we saw Bob cross the border every day or every other day at one of our border crossings from Mexico. And now Bob is crossing, every 2 to 3 weeks. And you ask him, what's going on? Why you crossed all the time and now and then they admit, well, when I get over here, this company has me go off and haul domestic loads. And this is happening more than you might think, right? I mean, CBP knows this. I will tell you, the Trump administration will absolutely want to sink their teeth into this issue. And people in the industry should expect them to do this in the not too distant future. However, I do think this English language out of service, being out of service again, will help. I'm hopeful it'll help tamp that down.
As we talk about transportation in today's marketplace, what keeps you up at night worrying about tomorrow or the future in transportation?
Ooh, man. Automation. There's a lot of talk around autonomous vehicles, where we're going with electronics and the self-driving capabilities of vehicles. So what I worry about and what I think about is how is that going to look in 5 to 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Because where we were prior, traditionally it's always been man in a truck or woman in a truck in the seat, getting from point A to point B as safe as possible. How do we ensure that it's still the process or part of the goal when it comes to automation and self-driving vehicles? And what does that look like from a customer standpoint or a shipper standpoint?
Yeah.
So a lot to think about in the upcoming future for the transportation industry.
I would agree. I think that you're seeing the electric vehicle component with us, in the industry and I think there's niches where it can bring value, and I've said that before, but I don't necessarily know that it's throughout the industry at this moment.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We are still quite a ways away from fully engulfing it into the entire industry widespread, but it's coming. It's just a matter of time. When that time is, we don't know.
I think we're still going to see attrition
Yeah.
at the end of this year.
Which is a good thing because, hey, I've been watching, when I go out and take my truck out, go to truck shows, I'm appalled at some of the stuff that goes on. Like, I don't think there's anything that gets my skin up more than the driver that takes the 30-minute break in the fuel island. Or some of the stuff. I mean, I've had a really big problem with drivers that don't have a CB radio for years. I just don't understand how drivers can be disconnected. But having watched what goes on for the last 10, 15 years, I'm starting to connect the dots now with this non-domicile CDL and the English language proficiency. I'm starting to connect the dots now with what's going on. And I actually think there's a lot more drivers that we're not talking about that are doing what I see go on here in Boston, and that's just people that are not insured and don't have a license at all, just driving around. Because in my wife's catering business, they've had a number of cars hit their vans that just take off, and they are not licensed and don't have any insurance. Now
That's why they take off.
That's not a new phenomenon. I mean, when we started Safety Cam in Australia in 1997, which is the overhead gantries that measure your hours of service and speed and license validity when you drive under them, they got these cameras all over Australia that do everything, which we should have a whole discussion about one day on another podcast. It's a fascinating system that would solve all of this carrier identity stuff that we've got going on here. They found in 1997, when they started running cars underneath these cameras, 5% of the entire national car fleet was unregistered, had never been registered. So I bet that there's a lot of trucks, and I know that I see them out there, have no DOT number, but it's a fake DOT number on the side, because you see them with the handwritten numbers. I bet there's a lot of truckers out there that have no CDL, no license, no DOT, nothing, no insurance, whipping up and down the roads. I bet there's a bunch of them.
I think you summarized it well. Tariff chaos. That would be a good way of putting it. I put it a little differently when I speak to my members and to the industry. I'm like, the tariff situation is confusing and complicated, right? I mean, if you think about it, there's all different. I mean, they're using what's called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, tariffs. We're using Section 232, which is around national security, 232 tariffs, and Section 301 tariffs, which are generally put on products from specific countries that are considered unfair trade practices. So you add it all up, we have so many different types of tariffs at different levels, and so forth. I mean, we've seen the average effective tariff rate go from prior to the president's inauguration day, less than 2.5% in the U.S. to nearly 30% from late March through late April. Now we're at 15.6%. And while that's a lot lower than close to 30%, it's 550% more than where we were prior to the president's inauguration. So this has got, people trying to beat tariffs, and then so it causes this, swing up with hurry up, get stuff in, and then, now let's not bring anything in, and then, it's down again, and it may go back up. Let's get it in, and it's just causing a lot of uncertainty, a lot of issues with freight and all. But yes, I do tariff policy. I deal with the government on that, and it's taking up a lot of my time.